St. Paul, the Fan.
It's a covenant cleanup.
Hey, I haven't seen for a second.
Sounds of hockey.
Shall we begin?
Streaks in left side, ran out route center, they score! Erickson followed it up, cleaned it up, and the Wild have tied this game apart. Sword back, Chisholm has a lane, fired a shot, he scores! Welcome to Minnesota, Declan Chisholm! A power play goal in the third with traffic in front, his wrister beat Fluken, and the Wild have a 2-1 lead. It's 9 to noon, Nordo in for PA on this President's Day, and it's normally VOX in the box here at XL Energy Center. Today it is the non-VOX out of the box, as I, Nordo, am in the depths of XL Energy Center in the beautiful Wild Radio Network studio. And I'll be with you from 9 to noon in front of a hockey day matinee of sorts. Vancouver Canucks in town. Puck drop shortly after 1 p.m. You'll get to hear that right here on your home for Wild Hockey, the Fan, as well. Kevin Falness has been gracious enough to lend me the use of this studio from 9 to noon this morning. Excited to hang out with Kevin over the next hour. But right now, even more excited to talk to Minnesota Wild head coach John Hynes as he prepares to do battle with the Canucks today. How are you this morning, John?
I'm great, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. And very, very positive things happening for you over the last week and a half or so. You almost get it to 5 in a row, and you get busted in overtime by the Sabres on Saturday. But you find the rhythm. You have a lot of your big-timers playing really well right now, something you can carry forward not only into today, but also tomorrow at Wednesday.
Yeah, it certainly is. I think we've, since we've come back from the break, we've been playing a real solid style of game. One of the things we talk with our guys about is win or lose, we have to play at a competitive level, a speed level, and also a structure level that gives you a chance to win every night. And I think we've been able to do that for the most part, and the results have followed. And it's nice to see, as you said, some of the top players really playing to the best of their ability. And they're skilled players, but they're really skating and working, and they're combining, hard work to complement their skill, and that's why they're having success.
Yeah, you speak of structure, John, and it's good times, bad times in a situation like Saturday's game with Buffalo, but you get out alive with those 3 penalty kills in the first period. So in some ways, it's like we finally find our flow, maybe after the first intermission, but the power play has just been so damn good for you guys of late. What goes into that?
Well, I think both sets of special teams have been really strong as of late. I think they, like you said, the penalty kills come up with some big kills. There's great attention to detail with the guys on that unit. and we're getting key saves at key times. And then regarding the power play, it's really been indicative, very similar to our 5-on-5 play. I think that they're executing at a high pace. They have a shot mentality. I think when there's loose pucks in the offensive zone on the power play, they're doing a really good job of hunting those pucks down and extending time in the offensive zone for the power play. And then they're playing direct and attacking style.
One of those guys, John, that is an integral part of your power play and an integral part of your lineup is Joel Eriksson Ek. 25th goal of the season the other night. I think he's up to 10 power play goals. I'm wondering what you thought of Joel Eriksson Ek as head coach, say, of the Nashville Predators compared to now as a guy that you're throwing out there on, I think he's getting 20, 25 minutes a night.
Yeah, Eki was a guy that obviously coaching against him, you always, are aware of him. And when you see him, 3 or 4 times a year, sometimes you don't have as much, you don't truly know the player. You just know he's a good player. But now having the opportunity to coach him, he's a really unique guy. He's a big, strong centerman. He plays very consistently. He plays the game the right way. And what I mean by that is he's as equally intense and effective when he's in the checking part of the game, but also in the attacking part of the game. Plays key minutes. As you said, he can play up to, 23 minutes a night, and he's got a huge tank. Like his fitness level and his ability to play the game the right way for the amount of minutes that he plays has been really, really impressive. He's a guy that's really hard to find. It's hard to find centermen like that that can play all the situations that he does regularly.
Speaking of, in some ways, hard to find, you guys make the move. Declan Chisholm, very limited opportunities in his NHL career, some games with the Jets. He makes a debut for your squad on Saturday. And I guess, from your mindset, it's if you're going to put the sweater on and you're going to play, you create that standard. There's no doubt about it. But, kind of sum up what you got to see from him on Saturday. He gets the goal. Looked pretty damn good defensively as well. What'd you like about Declan Chisholm handling business on Saturday against the Sabres?
It was a good game for him. I think, when our scouts decided to pick him off waivers and in talking with Billy that he's a young player that obviously didn't get a tremendous amount of opportunity in Winnipeg, but he's a good skater. He's got good size. He moves the puck well. He does have a power play element to his game. And I thought he came in and all those attributes that I just talked about, they were certainly factors in his game. And it was nice to see him come in and fit right in, but not only fit right in, he impacted the game in a real positive way.
That's Minnesota Wild head coach John Hynes. It's Nordo in for PA 9 to noon. Kevin Falness with me in the Wild Radio Network studio at XL Energy Center. Puck drop, Wild and Canucks shortly after 1 p.m. right here on The Fan. Kevin?
At this point, John, do you have any thoughts on what your lineup will be today? Any changes of riding this 4-0-1 streak?
There will not be any changes today, no.
So you've got a guy waiting in the wings. I was just wondering about Mason Shaw. The story that he's been able to cobble together, 4 torn ACLs, and now signing that 2-way contract, waiting in the wings, and is going to be around here till the end of the season. What do you make of that story, and how anxious are you to see him whenever he gets that shot?
Yeah, I mean it's a tremendous story. I actually just met Mason when he got recalled, but prior to him getting recalled, you talk with the coaches and management about different players in the organization, and the thing about him was just how competitive he is, great work ethic, and you look at the story of having 2 ACL surgeries on both knees, and then fighting his way back to get back to be an impact player in Iowa, and now he's obviously recalled with us. So he's a heart and soul type of guy, and I think he's beloved by his teammates. He's really respected within the organization, and it's nice to have a player like that waiting in the wings. He's chomping at the bit to play, and we feel like he's going to get an opportunity here shortly. And when he does, we're expecting him to come in and bring what he brings. He's a heart and soul guy, great energy, tremendous work ethic. But individually for him to be able to see and hear the story of him getting back is certainly inspirational.
It's so impressive. And John, the decisions that you have to make, as you noted, not making any changes in the lineup today, but, it's waiting in the wings, but also is it when you have healthy players that are available, get recalled like in this case, is that something in some ways that sends a message like maybe this guy needs to pick it up or something needs to get better among those that will be playing, knowing that a Mason Shaw is sitting there as chomping at the bit to get back into the mix?
Yeah, it certainly is. I think that when you have 13 forwards, obviously one player is out, but certainly a guy that is a very competitive guy, works hard in practice, and he's going to be ready to go. There's always that thing in the back of your mind if you're a player that there is someone sitting there. So I think that same thing on D. We have 8 defensemen now, and obviously with Declan Chisholm coming in and playing really well, we have 2 guys sitting out that have played regularly for us as well. So I think sometimes having that internal competition, extra guys around a little bit, that it's just a little bit more, I think, awareness and the guys that are in the lineup, there's just that, someone's waiting there. So it's you got to be on top of your game every night.
Big week coming up, massive road trip coming up after today, but I know it's one game at a time, so let's concentrate on today. Oh, well, it's just the number one team in the Pacific, the West, and the National Hockey League coming in the Vancouver Canucks. You guys are 1-1 against them this season. What challenges do they present here in St. Paul?
Well, they're a very talented team. I think they're deep at all positions. So they have 2 really good goaltenders. Both have won a lot of games for them. I think when you look at their D and forwards, they have a lot of depth. But it's more so the style of game. To win regularly in the league, you have to play a fast game. You have to check really well. It's going to be a game where you have to play, north-south. You're going to have to manage the puck. You're going to have to fight for your ice. It's going to be a highly, highly competitive game, and I think it's a good test for us. It's something that, we've really been playing that style as of late, knowing that that's how you have to play, and the commitment level, your competitive level, mentally and physically every night to lay it on the line as hard as you can is required to win regularly in the league, but it's certainly required to win when you're playing the top teams.
Hey, thank you so much for your time this morning on a game day morning, and looking forward to seeing you guys beat the Canucks later today. Appreciate the time you give us each and every time you do come on 9 to noon, John.
All right, guys, thanks. It's always a pleasure. Have a great day.
See you, John.
Appreciate
Good luck.
it. You too. That's John Hynes, head coach of the Minnesota Wild, and that does kick off what we call 9 to noon, the Timber Tech set list. John Hynes, by the way, he's always brought to you by Pronto Heating and Air, prontoheat.com. But the Timber Tech set list as it is, you heard from the head coach. You've heard from Kevin Falness. And he's going to be with me for most of the first hour here, and I might just start bugging him during the 11 a.m. hour as he's trying to plan out his pregame. But we're going to have VOX Bites around 9:45 today. It won't all be hockey, as we are broadcasting live from XL Energy Center. Michael Russo, he's either in an airport or a Starbucks somewhere. He's going to join me at 10. Pat Micheletti, a little bit of pro, a little bit of college as the Gophers hockey team, Motzko's team, split with Notre Dame over the weekend. Kevin Gorg is going to be joining me here at the X around 11 o'clock. And that's the set list brought to you by TimberTech, timbertech.com. More on the Minnesota Wild, whether it's Declan Chisholm's debut. It is Mason Shaw, as we just heard from the head coach. Sounds like he's not going to be back on the ice today. At Winnipeg tomorrow, maybe that's an opportunity. Trade deadline coming up in early March. There are a lot of things to get into with this hockey team that is staring at that playoff spot. It feels like it's so close, yet so far away. And we'll continue down that road with Kevin Falness here at the X. It's 9 to noon. You're listening. Welcome back. It's 9 to noon. Nordo in for PA. PA's back tomorrow. He's out in the Mile High City. And then he'll be off again Wednesday, then back in the homeland on Thursday. So a bit disjointed, a roller coaster of a week for a show that rides on emotion that is much like a roller coaster. Nordo here, Kevin Falness. We're at this studio's unbelievable, Kevin.
Yeah, they've done a nice job. You say Vox in the box. This is kind of a box.
A little bit. I mean, it's got a little bit of a prison feel to it at this particular moment, but the equipment, I mean, this is top notch,
state of the art.
I need to bring all the iHeart brass. I'm going to bring and we're just going to tour it. Like children at the Science Museum across the street.
One of the nerds that are always down here is Halvey, and he's had a first-hand look, and I know he's been reporting back to the powers that be over there at iHeart that you need an upgrade in some of your setup, because this is state-of-the-art stuff here. It's been great. We've upgraded as we've went along here since the year 2000. It's been awesome.
Yeah, this is the absolute space age, and I appreciate you letting me hang out with you. Now, there's no direct access to the food anymore.
No.
So we don't like that part.
There is a window so I can look at it and they can look at me. I don't know what they get out of watching me work, but we left the window in between the two. We're talking about the on the glass room that used to be, or is still over there, that I used to have a direct door out to. So what they did when they switched things around, they took off my post-game studio and instead gave me another room that's side to side with my main studio. So now I've got an actual setup.
Well, this is more radio functional.
Yeah, 100%.
But still, in the end, I got to be honest. If I'm paying the extra couple of bucks for the prime rib and the food and the buffet and the beverages and all that, and I'm sitting there and I'm cutting up a big slice, and I have to look through the sneeze guard and then through the window.
If you think I lobbied for this window, you're out of your mind. I can tell you this, a little secret in the postgame. Before the postgame concludes, I can just walk out that hall and in that door, get a couple of those free beers, bring them back here, have them ready to go once I'm off the air. So
once you're off the air,
we've established a trend, yes.
In case the FCC
always when I'm off the air
is directly listening.
Yes.
We talked with head coach John Hynes last segment. I'm kind of disappointed. Russo got me going when I saw that he was practicing Mason Shaw.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking about it yesterday. I'm like, I can't believe what he's been through. And then I think it was Saturday. Didn't you have him on in one of the intermission breaks?
Great. Yeah, no, we had him on Beyond the Pond.
Beyond the Pond.
For like 15 minutes.
Okay, that's what it was. But I listened to I only caught about 90 seconds, 2 minutes of the conversation, but his yearning to get back, the commitment to it. I mean, you have to, from the outset, it's been a disaster health-wise for him.
Yes.
And how crippling that could be mentally, but there's no quit. And it's really impressive to see, and I was hoping to get to see him today.
You can be the most hardened cynic in the entire free world, and it's impossible not to root for Mason Shaw. His story is unbelievable. Not the fact that he's wrecked his knee not once, twice, 3 times, but 4 times, and now he's made his way back from that 4th blown ACL that happened back on April 1st of last season. It happened against the Vegas Golden Knights. They yank him off the ice. You can tell that he's just devastated. He knows what that road back is like. And yet he went through it once again. And not only did he go through, I mean, he's on the precipice of recovering from that entire thing already. He's going to get back into an NHL lineup. That's ridiculous that he's done it now. Not only 3 times, he's in the process of doing it a 4th time. It's going to happen. You heard John Hynes talk about it.
Yeah.
It could happen as soon as tomorrow night. If it isn't tonight, it could happen tomorrow in Winnipeg. It could happen later this week.
Yeah, and that's probably the most impressive thing maybe is, we as fans, me as a rube, and you know me well enough to know that, coming in here today, whether I'm talking with you, I'm talking with Russo, Micheletti, Gorg, etc., that I have to do a lot of catch-up work when it comes to conversing about the National Hockey League. And that's why I got a ton of, this Vancouver thing's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I had no idea that the Canucks were on. I mean, they're as good as it gets right now.
Right.
We're going to get to see Brock Besser in town. We'll talk about that. But just as a rube that loves sports, we rank players. It's a stats game. It's a titles game, all of that. But you want like a comedian's comedian, a guy that never is the most famous comedian, but every comedian will swear to you that he's the funniest or she's the funniest person you've ever met in your life. It feels like Mason Shaw has to have some sort of cachet in terms of being a player's player, because it's not just the mental game of putting yourself in a position. He has actually returned and then played well enough to receive a contract and a salary from an NHL team 3 times, about to do it a 4th. And he's never going to compete from a stat perspective, most likely, with the greats of all time in the NHL. No. But in terms of what this individual has done, accomplished in his own battle to be here, I mean, that's as good as it gets.
I just can't imagine doing it once, let alone 4 times, and then to be able to get back to the highest level possible. You're right. He's not going to be a guy that's going to be considered for the first line. He's not going to challenge Kirill Kaprizov for ice time. But what he does do, I mean, look at his stats last year. He had 59 games in the National Hockey League. He established his role with this squad. Mostly a fourth-line grinder, mostly a guy that can kill penalties, but he's a guy kind of like a Connor Dewar or a Brandon Duhaime. Those legs just don't quit. He's got the heart of a lion, and I can't wait to see him back out there. It was fun during the playoffs last year when he did the Let's Play Hockey, and he got everyone fired up. And that's because this team, he means so much to this team. A lot of these guys just absolutely love and adore the kid. Can't wait to see him back out there on the ice, and it's going to be soon. I really do think so.
Well, and that was partly why I went down the road. It was Russo and then Joe on The Athletic. You know, they kind of wrote an article about forwards on notice.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm curious if you wanted to drill that down. I think he was practicing maybe with Letary yesterday. Is that accurate?
I think that's the common thought is that the guys on standby right now are mostly the guys on the third line, and that would be Freddie Gaudreau is the one that comes to mind, the biggest one, and because he's kind of fallen off the map a little bit. Statistically, he hasn't provided much of anything right now, and he's a guy that's not counted on being a guy that's going to play in the top 6 role, but he's got to produce something, and right now he isn't. So he's probably on watch. You know, they bounced Ryan Hartman around a little bit. They also brought up Connor Dewar to play on that third line with Duhaime. So yeah, there are some guys on watch right now, and you know, I think this might be a good opportunity for some of them to restate their case for where they belong in the lineup, because Mason Shaw's knocking, and now it's a matter of when he gets in.
You know, you mentioned Gaudreau, and there's, you know, opportunities and rhythm. There are all sorts of things that go into it, but he was kind of the guy when he first joined the Wild a couple of years ago, and it was part of guys having their career years, right? Like from a goal scoring perspective, it was Foligno. Hartman had 30-some goals, and Gaudreau kind of bounces up. Most goals in his career, also the most games he had played in his career. I think he had like 15 or so goals a couple of years ago. And then he was almost a 2020 guy last year. And Freddie Gaudreau was also, if you needed somebody to score you the game-winning goal in regulation, Gaudreau, not your guy. If you needed a guy to win a shootout for you,
that's what I was going to say.
He was an absolute assassin.
He's the latest version of Petteri Nummelen, for sure.
Absolutely. And I'm just going to move on and pretend that I know who Nummelen is.
Yeah.
And so, but then that drop off. And so, as much excitement as what surrounded, and certainly validly so, around some of these guys, Gaudreau was kind of a person in my mind as more of an outsider in this, saying, you know, okay, well, prove it again. And then he did last year, I think, by all accounts. But man, what a disappointing year for him in terms of, you know, now being a guy that is kind of more of an anchor than a compliment to what's happening.
Well, again, more statistically, yeah, he's had a down season when it comes to putting points on the board. He's only got 10 points thus far through 42 games. And 3 of those are goals. He's a minus 12. He hasn't been completely healthy all season long either. But yeah, there is more to Freddie Gaudreau than just him, what he does in terms of stats. He's a guy that can kill penalties. He plays a valuable role, but he's been somewhat invisible, and that's not like Freddie Gaudreau. Usually you notice what he's doing, and I think right now that's something that's drawing the ire of John Hynes. You know, they talk about mixing the lines a little bit, and he's been right there in the center of that. So it'd be nice to get him going, because you need him to contribute. You need that third line to contribute. As much as the top line has to drive things and you have to get some production from the second line, the third line has to help out, and right now they've been a little bit non-existent.
So let me ask you this, and this might be an awful comparison.
Okay.
But, so the Edmonton Oilers with McDavid and Draisaitl, that's pretty good, right?
Yeah, it's pretty good.
But a couple of things, it feels like depth for them has been an issue at times in the past, and they've caught, you know, I mean, they're similar to Vancouver. They've been rising up the charts for the last month and a half or so. Goaltending and depth, really, you know, some concerns with the Oilers. And so,
defense, yeah.
Okay. Now you're ruining the whole comparison.
Oh, no, then go ahead, sorry.
Stop adding bad things about the team.
Okay.
No, what my point was in this, though, is like, Boldy's been playing so well lately. Kaprizov finding the net, and really, I mean, I believe it's like he's assisting in like 9 of his last 10 games, something ridiculous like that. He's playing incredibly well.
17 points in his last 12.
Jules Eriksson Ek, another
Awesome.
example. But then it almost feels like, again, and tell me if I'm right, like the third and fourth line at times has kind of felt like the land of misfit toys, where finding the right combination, finding productivity. And so it's not necessarily, I can't indict Gaudreau for doing things necessarily that don't show up on the stat sheet.
Right.
But you got to get some production down there, and they aren't getting it.
Yeah, I mean, and comparing them to Vancouver or Edmonton, by the way, they've got another $15 million they can spend that the Wild can't. That's also part of the issue. There's only so much that the Wild can do. These are the pieces they've got, and these that they're going to go to play with. There's no other real options. There's nothing really waiting there in Iowa at this point, and this is just kind of what you got for the next 2 years. I still have belief in this team. I have belief in that third line that they can figure out a combination. Now it's just a matter of coming up with it. I mean, this top line that's been on fire, whatever it is, 18 points the last 4 games, I think maybe 20 points in the last 4 games between the three of them. That's only been along for the last 4 games at the end of that Chicago Blackhawks game. So it's a matter of finding the right combination, finding something that clicks, and then going with it. And I still think Freddie Gaudreau can be a valuable piece in this lineup.
Declan Chisholm?
Yeah.
How much did you know about him before?
Nothing.
Yeah, right?
Nothing. No, as much as you know about Petteri Nummelin, that's what I knew about Declan Chisholm, other than until they signed him at the end of January. But the early returns are great. I'll guarantee you, John Hynes loves what he saw from him. And again, it's only 1 game. The kid probably was running on adrenaline as much as anything. Just his 5th game in the National Hockey League, makes his Minnesota Wild debut, and scores a huge goal, which unfortunately wasn't the game winner. Looked for a long time like it would be, but still, what a debut for the young man.
Well, watching that game on Saturday too, it had to be, whether you're looking for things that pop on a Saturday game like this and a chance to go 5 in a row, and you get Jules Eriksson Ek, he's doing his thing. It felt like it had to be a Declan Chisholm moment to put that one in. But of course, it had to be Casey Middlestat at home. There's the entire Middlestat family, multi-generation. They got 50 people in the stands.
Always the Minnesota kids, right?
And then it was the big rig.
Yeah.
Now, he doesn't get credit for the goal, but that's Greenway's goal.
Yep.
It had to be Jordan Greenway to tie it with 35 seconds left. A guy that, did he ever live up to the potential of the physical way that, we would have wanted him to play? Probably not. Again, talking about production and stat sheet numbers and such, maybe that never got to where it was. But it had to be him with 35 seconds left to break the hearts and crush the souls of everybody at the X.
Right on the doorstep there. And it's so disappointing because the Wild did actually play a pretty decent brand of hockey for the majority of that game, and then it got away from them in the latter stages of regulation. And when points are at such a premium, to watch that one go down the drain and then lose it in overtime. An overtime, by the way, in which the Wild pretty well dominated until they didn't. Matt Boldy misses the net. They take it the other way, and then it's lights out, game over. You settle for a point, and now you're 4-0-1 in your last 5 rather than having won 5 in a row. But, yeah, of course, the big rig was the guy there causing all the havoc. I loved him in Minnesota, but there's something about when you talk about Jordan Greenway, that big size, that big body, he's almost too nice of an individual, and that's part of the problem with him. If he had a mean streak, man, he would be a terror because he is such a big body.
He just needs to be angry.
He needs to be, someone needs to pee in his Cheerios or something. Do something to make him angry.
Sounds
because,
awful.
It does sound, but would that make you angry?
That would make me mad, yes.
Yeah. And if you're 6'6" with a wingspan that can touch both of the sideboards, that's a guy that I don't want to make angry. But man, he didn't play with that mean streak enough, and there just wasn't enough consistency for him here in Minnesota. Hopefully he gets that rekindled there in Buffalo. Sounds like he's having a pretty decent season out there. I can't say that I watch a ton of Buffalo Sabres hockey, and they're completely underachieving for that lineup to be where they are in the standings. Too bad, so sad. But I wish Jordan Greenway well. I just wish it wouldn't have scored that big goal late in regulation.
Maybe that's something they would do up in Buffalo. I mean, you got Bills Mafia, like it's weird.
It sounds
fan base.
exactly like something they would do.
Pee in? I think Buffalo. I think if you live in, you would pee in someone's Cheerios.
What a stupid thing to say, but
we're way too above that. We're way too above that in Minnesota.
Yeah.
And so you're right.
Minnesota nice.
Minnesota nice, at least to your face and to your cereal and to your food. But that's what they're doing up in Buffalo.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't.
They should. They aren't because he's not playing mean.
I didn't know that.
They did score goals.
Is it just? Tell me if I'm wrong on this. Kevin Falness. We're at the Wild Radio Network
The Bob
studios
Kurtz
at
Radio
the X.
Center is what we call it, Nordo.
And it's a matinee. The Bob Kurtz
Radio Center.
Oh, perfect. Bob Kurtz Radio Center. That's awesome. Love Kurtzy.
Downstairs from the Al Shaver press box.
Downstairs, okay. Downstairs from the Al Shaver press box. Just an elevator away.
That's right.
Get your popcorn up there. Come on down and do some radio.
Don't take the stairs.
No, that's a long walk. Guys like us don't take the stairs, which is why there's no longer a door from the radio studio
right.
to the food area. Hey, with these Canucks, is at one point, Wild fans were clamoring for, and maybe it was never even a reality, but the Canucks have their issues. A year ago, Bruce Boudreau unceremoniously dispatched. It's kind of weird. Taka takes over eventually in Vancouver. At some point, I just remember as a Rube seeing like people like, go get Brock Besser. Go trade for him. Do whatever you can. You've mentioned it, and this is just the perennial. I mean, it's just the weight around the neck of Bill Guerin and the team, the money situation and all of that. And I think Brock probably gets paid too much or has term, whatever the situation is. But at one point, the Canucks were potentially going to be dismantled. And now they are where they are. So whether it's Elias Pettersson, it's, Brock's got 30-plus goals. Like, is that just the story? It's just they are absolutely lightning fire right now. Is there more to it than what I am seeing on the surface?
I'll tell you, when the Wild played them, I think that was the bubble, when they faced them in the
the
playoffs,
2020, the bubble,
whatever
bits.
that was.
No, that was awful.
And it was awful hockey. It was stale environment, all that stuff. But you could see.
Did they do big heads in the NHL?
I don't know what that is.
No, don't you? So in MLB, they had no fans in the stands.
Yeah.
And then they decided they were going to start putting big heads.
No, we
like
didn't.
The cardboard cutouts.
No, the
and
NHL
everything.
didn't do that. They tarped off the seats, I think, more than anything.
It's a lack of creativity.
I know. Well,
that's fine.
That's fine. But
the bubble bits, 2020.
Yeah, when we were going through that, and you looked at some of the names on their roster and the young faces there and the emerging talent in Vancouver, it felt like it was just a matter of time where these guys were going to be a beast in the Pacific and the Western Conference for many years to come. And then they weren't. They all fell off the map at the same time, and things fell apart. And then Boudreau takes over, and now in comes Rick Tocchet, and now they've reemerged. And now, amazingly, they're number one in the entire National Hockey League. They've cobbled together an incredible season where they're getting goaltending. You didn't mention Quinn Hughes. He's fantastic on the back end. One of those Hughes brothers that's doing some great things for them defensively.
Is
and Brock
Jack
Besser,
the other one?
There's Jack, and then there's the other kid, Luke Hughes, out in New Jersey as well.
Okay.
And they're just fantastic. I mean, Jack Hughes is the number one overall pick, and he's having a phenomenal season there for the Devils. But now Brock Besser's found his scoring touch again. He's got 30 goals on the season. I tell you, it's a real tough team to battle. The Wild have their work cut out for them this week. It's not only tonight. Tomorrow you go to Winnipeg, which is always a terrible place to travel to. You got Edmonton later in the week, and then it's a head-to-head matchup with the team that you're battling with for one of those final playoff spots in the West, in the Seattle Kraken. This is a very tough week, and tonight this afternoon isn't going to be easy against the number one team in the National Hockey League. But the way the Wild are playing, they are 1-1 against this team. Maybe they can, put together a couple of good points and see where it takes them on the road.
Overall, reading about it, the Wild do have, you're right, hellish week of sorts with Vancouver, Winnipeg, and Edmonton, two of those on the road. But overall, the schedule down the stretch does lend to the idea that as teams are starting to fade, Arizona, I think you still got at least one or two against them. Those sorts of teams, Anaheim still very much in the mix from a schedule standpoint with the Wild, that the schedule, we're not going to be able to use that as an excuse.
No, you're not.
Some unbelievable 8-game road trip that just crushed us. It's not going to be that. There's a lot of bad teams on the schedule, so maybe that's part of what, if we're selling hope for a team that's still 4 points out of a spot, you're 100%. Looking at that.
But the problem is you got to get through this week, and this week is a monster for the reasons we just said. I don't know what. Of these potential 8 points, I think if you got out of it with 4, you'd be happy, because then you got the opportunity to really do some damage in the final
the score a little
20-some games. What do you mean?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Let's get through this week and then let's run it up a little bit.
Exactly. So if you can figure out a way to get 4 out of a possible 8 points out of these 4 games, because it's going to be tough, including today against the Canucks, I think you'd be pretty happy with that. You wouldn't say that publicly, but I think 4 out of a possible 8 points, considering that you've got the number 1 team in hockey today, and then you're on the road for 3 straight against 3 pretty tough opponents in their buildings. 500 wouldn't be terrible.
No, that wouldn't be. One or two more for you here, and then I'm going to pause and get to some VOX bites here. You like VOX bites?
Will you do that from here? Will you go VOX bites? VOX bites!
I don't know what happened to me. My voice cracks when I do it, though.
That's
it hurts.
Right.
Makes me sound prepubescent and all of that. Mike Yeo is an assistant for the Canucks, isn't he?
I heard him on with Russo yesterday.
How about that?
He's filling in for Sunday sermons.
I loved Mike Yeo.
I did too.
He was awesome.
Yeah, I loved his tantrum. I mean, that was just vintage Mike Yeo. But beyond that, just a great guy. We haven't had many dirtbags as far as head coaches go for the Minnesota Wild. We've had a pretty good run of good dudes, and he's definitely right there at the top of the charts.
Who was it between him and Boudreau where we had Torchetti?
Torchetti was the interim
coach. And he was
coach.
A super nice guy.
Best accent outside of Mario Tremblay in the history of Wild hockey.
Oh, just straight Beantown.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
It was so cool.
Yeah, his Minnesota Wild debut, home debut, I believe, was a stadium series out there at TCF Bank Stadium at the time.
Yeah, Mike Yeo in the building. And that's it. I don't want to say the NFL and many sports are not that different. Once you get into that fraternity of coaching, it's unless you're just awful at it and nobody likes you, it's kind of tough to get out of that mix. You know what I mean? So, but for a guy like Mike Yeo, it's cool to see that he's still finding his way in the league. I think he's an awesome dude.
And it tells you he's got talent. It tells you that he's a likable individual, and he's struck a chord there with Rick Tocchet. For whatever reason, they've found chemistry there, and it's still fun to see him on the bench.
Who's in net today?
I wanted to ask.
Why didn't you ask the coach?
I thought about it, but he gets that question every day. If I had to guess, because Philip Gustafson went the other night, it might be Gustafson tonight and Marc-Andre Fleury tomorrow in Winnipeg, but it could be flip-flop too. I wouldn't be surprised at either order.
Do you like matinee games?
Yes. Yes, if it was up to me and I had the ear of Gary Bettman, first of all, I'd give him a ton of other ideas, but I'd also mandate every game starts at 1 o'clock or earlier. How good would that be? Be done by happy hour? Just get on with your day, put the kids to bed.
That's one of the reasons I'm excited if the Wild are able to get their way back into the playoffs. I'm excited to talk about all the 8:30 p.m. puck drops.
Yeah, I know. That was the bane of Bob Kurtz's existence for sure. Now Tom Reed doesn't like the late night hockey, but that's part of the deal about, as you guys call it, living here in the cornfields.
Well, I can't thank you enough for coming in a bit early today, like a couple hours early to let me in here and get things set up for me to do the show. And appreciate you hanging out with me. I might harass you during the final hour, but we got to pause because there's somebody knocking on the door. He's got a cooler of beer. It's only 9:42 in the morning.
The delivery's here already?
Yeah,
all right, I gotta go.
It's got your name on the cooler. Now that's after the game, right?
Yeah, after. Okay. Only after.
After the game. That's in normal pregame today?
No, we are on at 12 o'clock because the common man has way too much to say in that hour that he's going to squeeze in. So we'll hit the airways at 1 o'clock on the Fan, 12:45 on the network.
All right, that's sweet. So that's Kevin Falness, and we will be broadcasting for the remainder of the show leading up to that extended pregame. We will lead you up to the pregame on the network and ultimately puck drop right here on the Fan shortly after 1 p.m. Mr. O'Donnell, Mr. Reed will be on the call. We're going to transition to Vikings over the next segment, and then more hockey with Michael Russo starting at 10 a.m. It's Nordo in for PA at the X. Matinee game day.
KFAN, the Fan.
If you want to chime into what's happening with your favorite KFAN shows, you can make your voice heard on the Brad Sean Bryant KFAN text line. Just let us know what you have to say by texting that message to 64686. That's 64686. Standard text message and data rate supply.
Text messages via 64686. Always encouraged, always appreciated. Good, bad, ugly, whatever it is. Text it in 64686. For instance, this individual texts in all the time, and I appreciate this person. They have not unveiled their name as part of any of these correspondences, but whether they continue to refer to Dalvin Cook as Delvin Cook, or anytime that I'm filling in for PA, like this morning, he says, "Hey, Nardo." I just appreciate that. Just appreciate texting in 64686, the voice texting, or just intentional trolling. I love it all. There's no doubt about that. You hear the NFL bet. It is time for VOX Bites. VOX Bites is presented by Thousand Hills Lifetime Grazed Grass-Fed Beef. You've heard me talking about these guys for about a month and a half now. When this box of meat shows up at your doorstep, it is awesome. And the selection of cuts and all of that, you can go online, you can shop, you can learn about the regenerative agriculture of it. Just go to Thousand Hills LifetimeGrazed.com and learn more. VOX Bites, led by Brett Blakemore. Where are we headed to first? VOX Bites!
We're headed to the story that seems like it won't die. I know it came out at least a week ago and was talked about on this program, but it's making the rounds again. It's even found its way onto my Twitter feed. And if you know anything about me, that's how you know it's going around. With Florio basically reporting that the Vikings are hesitant to give Justin Jefferson fully guaranteed money after the first year in a new deal, saying it's not the dollars, it's the structure. Where do you stand today on the Jefferson structure, money guaranteed fiasco?
Well, I'm in favor of Justin Jefferson as a person getting whatever contract he possibly can that pays him the most money and, guaranteed. That's kind of the conversation, or it has been in the NFL for years, right? Like, you see these big dollar amounts, but then it's always, okay, well, how much is guaranteed? Because now you get into it, okay, it's only guaranteed for injury after this year, or it's not guaranteed at all, and it's just a massive fat salary number that by the time the ink dries on the contract, you've already decided as an organization, and the player and his agent are probably already well aware that you're never going to make the total dollar amount involved in this contract. So it's frustrating to understand these numbers. Now we're in the popularity of the void years and things. So from a structural or a functional standpoint, I'm not a capologist, and that's where we all say thank goodness for Rob Brzezinski and how he puts all of this together and makes it all work. The tough thing with this is Justin Jefferson going to become the highest paid wide receiver in the NFL? Is he going to become the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL? I want Justin Jefferson on this team. Certainly a generational talent, but it goes back. I mean, it's just this back and forth. That's where, okay, well, you're going to sign JJ. Can you afford Justin Jefferson and Kirk? Well, yes, technically, but then Daniil's gone. Or can Daniil come back? It's the three-headed beast of talking about these contracts. You have, and Tom Pelissero put it best last Friday when he was with the Power Trip. And just thinking about, in some ways, whether it's a hockey standpoint, unprecedented what we're seeing with Mason Shaw, unprecedented in the NFL, what we're seeing with the Vikings is you have potentially the top offensive free agent, not potentially, Kirk, I think should be considered as the quarterbacks go and as this league goes. He's the top offensive free agent. And you may have the top defensive free agent, both unable to be tagged, both able to walk away to new teams without deals, both costing the Minnesota Vikings dead cap money on the back end, 15 or so, I believe, for Daniil, and then nearly 30, 28 and a half or 28 and some change for Kirk Cousins. Unprecedented that those two situations exist at the very same time for the purple. And then meanwhile, tacking on to that, this contract conversation with Justin Jefferson. So for me, I hate to frame it up whether I'm in favor. I want Justin Jefferson to get paid, and I want him to get paid by us. But the other end of it too is we can't be held hostage in this regard. Something has to give, and it has to work so that Justin Jefferson simultaneously happy with his deal, happy to be here, believes in whatever the quarterback plan is and wants to win games. But also on top of that, the team can't actually sacrifice or bite off nose to spite face and give up on the opportunity to do other things with cash in the effort of just keeping a guy that's going to fill seats and sell a lot of jerseys. It's an awful situation for Kwesi Adofo-Mensah on this team right now. I want JJ on this team. I cringe at the idea of paying a guy $50 million a year that doesn't throw passes. Now, JJ throws passes. I mean, once in a while, let's get 2 or 3 little end arounds and we do some trickery. But quarterback money for a non-quarterback on a team with a quarterback situation to solve, it's a lot. So the guaranteed part ultimately for me kind of becomes a non-factor, I guess, when I'm really focused in on what that total dollar amount looks like right now. The Vikings are over a barrel, and some of it is, well, it's self-inflicted, to be honest, with the lack of solution to several of these things over the last couple of years. That's not just Kwesi, that would be the previous regime that plays a part in this as well. So in favor or not in favor of guaranteed, at this point, I'm not worried about the guaranteed part. I'm thinking about with JJ is the total dollar and what that looks like, and I hope something makes sense for both sides.
I felt like you had your chance last year in the offseason, and then it just kind of the can got kicked over and over, and
we've
here
had
we
a lot
are.
of chances, Brett. We've had a lot of chances, and we've stiff-armed all of those, and now the 11th hour is officially upon us. So GM's going to make his money over the next month, for better or worse.
Speaking of guys that throw passes,
Vikes Bites.
the current odds for Kirk Cousins' next team, the Vikings lead, minus 200. Love that.
Yeah.
But then the Falcons plus 300, the Commanders plus 500, the Raiders 800, and then Titans, Patriots, Steelers, Bucks, Broncos, and the Bears at plus 5,000. But the Falcons at plus 300, what do you think of those odds? And are you confident and want Kirk back? Where do you stand on that whole thing quickly?
I hate to do this, but I did not catch that odds number, so please repeat that for me. I'm sorry. Kevin Falness is interrupting me and distracting me in the studio.
Yeah. Vikings are in the lead, minus 200.
Yeah.
And then you've got the Falcons plus 300, which is not nothing. Then the Commanders plus 500 and the Raiders plus 800.
Okay, perfect. That's all I needed. I appreciate that, and sorry for as if I wasn't listening. I've dealt with some of that in my own right over the course of time. I totally get it. Sorry about that. But so this is where going back to last week as well. No news is really neither good nor bad. However, until something real happens here, it all stays the same. The Falcons have money. They have belief in what they're building down there. The weapons for Kirk Cousins are immense in Atlanta. And, people that are wondering how, Kyle Pitts has now existed for several seasons in the NFL and the lack of usage there. You get in some ways, now they were 7-10 and fell out of a mediocre NFC South. But in some ways, people wondering why now former head coach Arthur Smith, the usage of Bijan Robinson, a lot of things make sense. You can play the personal angle with his wife, Julie Cousins, being in having family in the Atlanta area, etc. I think the keys for Kirk right now is it's March 12th or March 13th where that dead cap money becomes part of the program officially for the 2024 Vikings. So something has to happen before then. And this is where until something real happens, we're shooting from the hip on a day-to-day basis. The Vikings absolutely should be favored. They have every advantage in the world to make a decision on Kirk and bring him back. But the longer this goes out, Kirk has mentioned the combine multiple times, which leads me to believe that, as I've seen it myself, when we go to Indianapolis for the combine, that's where the majority of these conversations take place. This is where the conversations with Kirk will take place, or at least with Kirk's agent, and you'll see maybe some finality there. But that, once again, in terms of teams to go to, I like Atlanta. I kind of like the Steelers in that mix. But I think where Kirk's going to have a decision to make is what is comfortable for him to move into in terms of the next offense, having an understanding of it, having a command of it. Because this is a guy, we watched it, and as well as things gelled overall from a passing standpoint, the learning curve and the building up of Kirk Cousins in the Kevin O'Connell offense was a grind. And we witnessed that, and we saw mistakes. We saw inadequacies many times throughout last season. He had to build into that. The learning curve was immense. So I think at this stage of his career, if he is going to move on from the Vikings, there's got to be a scheme, there's got to be a philosophy fit there that Kirk feels just as comfortable as he would with the dollars that he will get from said team. But still, the Vikings absolutely should be favored. And now we just continue to play the waiting game, and maybe just for the rest of our freaking lives, we'll continue to talk about Kirk's contract and what's up with Daniil. Is he going to end up on the Kitties or the Bears? JJ wants to get paid. It's just conversation rest of our lives. There shall be no solution ever, it feels like. Let's do this. I know you got a couple of additional bites.
Bites.
In the hopper, so we're going to save those. We'll jump back into that maybe final hour, but we got to pause because Michael Russo of The Athletic, he is not in the building. He's en route. He's catching the other end of this back-to-back, so he's going to be in Winnipeg as the Wild will hopefully win this game today against the Vancouver Canucks at the X, which is where I am, and then they'll depart. They'll go to Winnipeg, hopefully make it 2 for 2. Winnipeg's no bargain up there either. So, but Russo is on his way to Winnipeg. He's going to join me by phone when we return to get back into the hockey conversation. It's a matinee game on a President's Day. Wild hosting the Canucks. I'm here in studio with you until noon. And that was Vikes Bites presented by Thousand Hills Lifetime Grazed Grass-Fed Beef. We'll be back on the Fan.